Picture this: a man walking alone through the frostbitten grounds of Sandringham, no security trailing behind him, no aides rushing to keep pace, no motorcade waiting at the gate, just a solitary figure, head down, jaw clenched, moving through one of the most prestigious royal estates on earth as if he were invisible, because to the family inside those walls he essentially is. That man is Prince Andrew, Duke of York, once the untouchable golden son of the late Queen Elizabeth. And that walk, it wasn't a morning stroll. It wasn't a quiet moment of reflection. That walk was a statement, deliberate, orchestrated, and loaded with a humiliation so profound that those who witnessed it could barely believe what they were seeing. This wasn't embarrassment. This was outrage. Outrage from within the palace itself. And the royal family made absolutely certain the world saw every second of it. But what exactly happened inside Sandringham that transformed a once powerful prince into a silent ghost, haunting the edges of his own exile? The answer will stun you. To truly understand the depth of this fall, you need to understand the height from which Andrew plummeted. Because this was not a man born into modest expectations. This was a man who inhabited a world designed entirely around his comfort, his status, and his unshakable belief that consequence was something that happened to other people. For decades, Prince Andrew existed in a bubble of breathtaking privilege. Royal Lodge, a 30-room Windsor mansion, was his personal kingdom, staffed around the clock, funded largely by the public purse. He moved through life surrounded by personal protection officers, private valets, and an endless rotation of staff whose sole purpose was to anticipate his every need before he even voiced it. He was the Queen's supposed favorite. That distinction alone shielded him from scrutiny that would have destroyed a lesser man far sooner. The institution wrapped itself around him like armor. He hosted lavish gatherings, commanded rooms without saying a word, and traveled the world in a manner more befitting a head of state than a prince with no formal portfolio. He didn't merely enjoy his privilege. He wore it like a birthright, wielded it like a weapon, and defended it with a ferocity that left staff, advisors, and even close family members quietly stunned. This was a man psychologically incapable of imagining a world in which the rules applied to him. That was the man who arrived at Sandringham. What happened next shattered even that carefully preserved illusion. When Prince Andrew was relocated to the Sandringham estate, it was not framed, either publicly or privately, as a graceful transition. There were no warm announcements, no dignified statements about a new chapter. What insiders describe is something far closer to a forced repositioning, a banishment dressed in the language of logistics. The contrast between where he came from and where he landed is nothing short of staggering. Royal Lodge was power made physical: gates, grandeur, proximity to Windsor and to the throne itself. Sandringham's wood farm and the intended marsh farm are, by every account, a universe removed. Sources close to the family have described Marsh Farm, the property Andrew is expected to settle into, as unremarkable at best, plagued by pest control problems, surrounded by boggy Norfolk fields, prone to flooding. One insider, barely concealing their contempt, referred to it simply as a shoe box compared to everything Andrew had come to regard as his baseline standard of living. When he arrived at Sandringham, King Charles was present. Senior members of the extended royal circle moved through the estate, and Andrew walked into that atmosphere without a single formal acknowledgement of his arrival. No ceremonial welcome. No private briefing that suggested his presence was valued or even particularly noted. The atmosphere, according to those familiar with the mood inside the estate, was described in one word: glacial. He was not given a seat at any table that mattered. He was not included in discussions. And perhaps most tellingly, he walked those grounds entirely alone. No aide beside him, no companion keeping step, just a man navigating the perimeter of a world that had decisively moved on without him. There is a reason the image of Andrew walking silently through Sandringham spread with such ferocity, because silence, in his case, speaks at a volume that words never could. Those who study royal behavior, body language specialists, longtime palace correspondents, and historians of the monarchy were unified in their reading of what that walk communicated. The downward tilt of the head, the rigid jaw, the measured, solitary pace of a man acutely aware he is being observed, but utterly powerless to control what that observation reveals. These are not the movements of a man at peace with his circumstances. These are the movements of a man absorbing a humiliation he cannot deflect, cannot charm his way out of, and cannot simply instruct someone to make disappear. What makes it even more striking is what experts describe as a deliberate absence of palace intervention. In previous years, when Andrew's public appearances threatened to generate unflattering coverage, quiet machinery would begin working behind the scenes: press office guidance, carefully managed timings, subtle buffers placed between the prince and the cameras. None of that appears to have happened here. Insiders suggest the palace made a calculated decision to allow those images to circulate unimpeded. The optics, in other words, were not accidental. They were permitted. This is the part that cuts deepest. Sandringham is not merely a country estate. It is hallowed ground in the truest royal sense. It is the place where the late Queen Elizabeth, the woman who loved Andrew most fiercely and shielded him longest, spent her final days and drew her final breath. A place of solemn royal gravity. And now her son wanders its edges like an uninvited guest, present but not included, visible but not acknowledged, a ghost in the grounds of his own family's history. But the humiliation didn't start with that walk. It had been building for weeks, and what triggered the royal outrage goes deeper than anyone is currently reporting. Here is where the story shifts from sad to explosive. Because the image of Andrew walking silently through Sandringham did not emerge in a vacuum. It emerged as the visible surface of a fury building inside the palace that sources describe as unlike anything in recent memory. Multiple accounts from those close to the institution paint a consistent picture. Andrew, despite everything, despite the stripped titles, the eviction from Royal Lodge, the ongoing police investigation, the international humiliation, had begun making quiet overtures about a return to some form of public life. Not loudly, not formally, but persistently. Conversations initiated through intermediaries. Suggestions floated that his experience and connections might still be of value in certain contexts. A quiet but unmistakable campaign to reinsert himself into a narrative that had emphatically closed its doors to him. When word of these overtures reached the senior levels of the palace, the reaction was not diplomatic concern. It was fury, raw, institutional fury. Sources use the word outrage specifically, not frustration, not disappointment, but outrage. Because this was not simply a man failing to accept a difficult situation with grace. This was a man under active criminal investigation, stripped of every formal royal function, living on the sufferance of a king who had already extended more patience than most believed was warranted, and still attempting to negotiate the terms of his own relevance. There are also reports that Andrew, during his time at Sandringham, made contact with individuals that senior palace officials considered deeply inappropriate given the ongoing investigation. The specifics remain closely guarded, but the effect on those in Charles's inner circle was immediate and decisive. The line, already drawn, was reinforced. The distance between Andrew and the working institution of the monarchy became, in the words of one source, effectively permanent. Beatrice and Eugenie, his daughters, were kept conspicuously away from any occasion that might have placed them in proximity to their father during this period. Not because they do not love him, but because the family, unified in this regard, understands that association carries a cost they can no longer afford to pay. And while the palace seethes behind closed doors, outside those walls, the Epstein shadow absolutely refuses to lift. Let's be precise about something, because it matters enormously. Prince Andrew is not merely a man dealing with the reputational aftermath of a past scandal. He is a man currently under active police investigation. Thames Valley Police have confirmed that Andrew remains a subject of inquiry related to his alleged sharing of confidential trade information with Jeffrey Epstein, a charge that, if substantiated, would represent a criminal act of extraordinary seriousness for a member of the British royal family. He was arrested on his 66th birthday. 11 hours in police custody. That is not a footnote. That is the lived reality of the institution's most uncomfortable ongoing crisis. And despite Andrew's categorical denials, delivered through spokespeople with the careful, rehearsed language of a man acutely aware of his legal exposure, the investigation has not concluded, the pressure has not eased, and the revelations have not stopped arriving. Documents surfacing in early 2026 have reignited scrutiny not merely around Andrew's relationship with Epstein, but around the full breadth of what was communicated, what was shared, and what was known. Each new release sends a fresh tremor through the institution, because the palace cannot fully insulate itself from a story that keeps generating new chapters. This is Charles's impossible position. He cannot formally distance the crown from Andrew without appearing to prejudge an ongoing legal matter. He cannot embrace or rehabilitate Andrew without sending a catastrophic signal about the institution's standards. So he holds the line, keeping Andrew at maximum remove, refusing all engagement, and watching as each new development tightens the vice. And Andrew's visible refusal to fully cooperate, his resistance to sitting across from investigators and answering questions directly, is read within palace circles not as legal prudence, but as ongoing defiance. It fuels Charles's frustration with a consistency that insiders say has worn every last thread of the king's remaining patience to nothing. That silent walk through the Sandringham grounds. Fleet Street photographers were positioned and ready. The images were front page within hours. Every step Andrew took was a headline he could not control. No account of Andrew's unraveling is complete without confronting the parallel implosion of Sarah Ferguson. Because while Andrew absorbs the most direct consequences, Fergie is drowning in the wake of the same wave, and the water is rising fast. Her financial position has long been precarious. 6 companies bearing her name have dissolved or entered liquidation. Charitable ventures she spearheaded have quietly shuttered. Reports of extended stays at clinics in Switzerland and wellness retreats in Ireland paint a picture of a woman under profound personal strain. For years, she managed to keep the worst of this at bay, sheltered by her continued presence at Royal Lodge, sustained by proximity to the privilege that Andrew's position still provided. That shelter is gone now, permanently. And in 2026, the documents that have emerged regarding her own communications with Jeffrey Epstein have done fresh, significant damage. Emails in which she referred to Epstein in terms of extraordinary warmth, as a legend, as the brother she had always wished for, have resurfaced with renewed force. Offers she extended to him, access she proposed. The language in those communications has, according to sources close to the royal family, profoundly disturbed those within the institution who hoped that chapter was buried. Her absence from Sandringham during this period raises its own questions. Was she kept away deliberately? Another quiet signal from the palace that her presence is equally unwelcome. Or did she choose distance, understanding that appearing alongside Andrew in the current climate would only accelerate her own erasure? Either way, Beatrice and Eugenie sit at the center of a wreckage created entirely by their parents, quietly furious, quietly humiliated, and entirely powerless to stop it. Here is what distinguishes Charles's handling of the Andrew crisis from anything that came before it. He has not been dramatic. He has not issued ultimatums in public. He has not given angry interviews or dispatched palace officials to deliver pointed public messages. What he has done is something far more devastating in its precision. He has been methodical, strip the titles, remove the allowance, withdraw the security detail, terminate the valet, evict from Royal Lodge, relocate to Sandringham, exclude from gatherings, deny meetings, refuse rehabilitation, repeat. There is no warmth in this strategy. There is no mercy, but there is, by any honest assessment, a cold and absolute logic. Charles inherited a monarchy already straining under the weight of Andrew's existence within it. He understood, as clearly as anyone in that institution has ever understood anything, that the cost of continued association was higher than the cost of total severance. So he chose severance, not loudly, not cruelly for its own sake, but completely. The Sandringham arrangement is itself part of that calculation. Andrew is present enough on royal land that Charles cannot be accused of abandoning him entirely, but he is removed enough geographically, socially, institutionally, that the working monarchy continues its business entirely unaffected by his shadow. He exists on the periphery, visible enough to be pitied, irrelevant enough to be safely ignored. One source with particular economy of language framed the entire strategy this way. The king did not need to raise his voice. The silence was the message. And that message has been received, understood, and inside Sandringham's walls at least acted upon. So what does it mean that Andrew says nothing? That he walks alone through those grounds with his jaw set and his eyes fixed somewhere no one else can see? There are two schools of thought. The first holds that the silence is genuine defeat, that this is finally, after years of defiance and denial, a man who has absorbed the full reality of his situation and found nothing left to say. A man who understands that the walls are no longer merely closing. They have closed, that the family has moved on, that the institution he believed would always protect him has not merely withdrawn that protection, but has actively engineered his irrelevance. The second school of thought is considerably more unsettling for those inside the palace, because Andrew's history does not support the narrative of quiet acceptance. This is a man who, at every prior junction, chose to fight rather than fold. The Emily Maitli's interview, catastrophically misjudged as it was not the act of a man inclined toward graceful retreat. It was the act of a man convinced he could still win an argument that the rest of the world had already concluded. His lawyers are undoubtedly counseling absolute silence while the investigation continues. That is standard, rational legal advice. But whether that silence reflects genuine acceptance or merely tactical restraint is a question that royal watchers cannot yet answer. Some believe his chapter is irrevocably closed. Others watch the periphery of Sandringham with considerable unease, warning that a man stripped of everything, cornered with nothing left to lose, is precisely the kind of wildcard that no institution ever fully controls. Come back for a moment to that image. A man walking alone through the grounds of Sandringham. Stone-faced, silent, solitary. The Norfolk wind moving around him as though even the weather has been briefed not to make a fuss. That image, viewed now with everything you know, is not a moment of personal sadness. It is an institutional statement. It is the British monarchy, lean, strategic, and utterly resolved, drawing a line in the earth so deep and so permanent that no amount of negotiation, no charm offensive, no carefully worded statement from any spokesperson will ever fully erase it. Sandringham, the place where the queen who loved him most drew her final breath, is now the setting for a quiet and absolute erasure. The symbolism is not lost on those who understand how this family operates. Nothing here is accidental. Every detail is a message. The monarchy has made its position clear. The titles are gone. The lodge is gone. The security is gone. The allowance is gone. The access is gone. All of it stripped with a deliberateness that leaves no room for misinterpretation. But here is the question that lingers in the cold Norfolk air, unanswered and deeply uncomfortable. Andrew has never, not once in his adult life, walked quietly into obscurity. The question facing this institution is not whether he has finally accepted his fate. The question is what he does next, and whether the palace, for all its cold calculation, is truly prepared for the answer. What do you think happens now? Does Andrew finally disappear quietly into the margins of history, or does he find a way to force himself back into the center of the story? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this video pulled back the curtain on a story you thought you already understood, wait until you see what we've uncovered about the next chapter of this saga. You will not want to miss it.